Now You Know BC is brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers. Explore our province in the all-electric BZ. Fast charging, long range, and ready for adventure. Welcome to Now You Know BC. I'm Bob Kronbauer, also known as BC Bob, and on this show I introduce you to interesting people, places to go, things to see, things that have happened in the past. You'll hear our collective stories. This week I'm telling you a bunch of random ones, story that maybe didn't fit into the themes of my previous episodes, so let's dig in. Did you know that a multi-millionaire once set up a free French fry vending machine in a Vancouver parkade that served up fresh, hot fries for anybody who wanted them, and that this went on for months? It's true. In the early 90s, French fry vending machines were already a thing, but a new company in Vancouver claimed that theirs, which was made in Korea, was the world's finest French fry vending machine. It was called the Spud Stop, and it made fries out of potato powder in 50 seconds or less. The company behind it was called Harvard International Technologies, and it was listed on the Vancouver Stock Exchange, an organization that was so full of scams and corruption that at one point it was estimated that 30% of the companies listed on it were fraudulent. The VSE was like the original crypto exchange, but that's another story for another day. The president of Harvard Capital was a guy named Edgar Kaiser Jr., who was once an owner of the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Denver Broncos, and who came from a super rich family. They were the founders of Kaiser Permanente and the Kaiser Foundation in the United States. Kaiser was apparently a really good salesman, because he convinced former Prime Minister John Turner to become the chairman of the board of this company. And one of their main investors was the president of Clearly Canadian, a massive success at the time. They got pre-orders for $258 million worth of Spud Stop machines from customers all over the world in 1993. Tons of people invested in their stock, whose price went way to the moon, and they paid all of their executives extremely well. So well, in fact, that the newspapers took note of how much money they were wasting. We'll come back to that. The free French fry vending machine on Georgia was in the parkade of their office building, and from what I've gathered, it seemed to be their sort of test kitchen where they could see how it was working by serving up a bunch of free orders every single day. The customers who got free fries were mostly bicycle couriers who told each other about it. This was just before the internet, so word of mouth was the only way that it got around. And it didn't last long. In 1994, just 1 year after the company got hundreds of millions of dollars in pre-orders for their machines, they went bankrupt. Partly because there were issues with machines, but also because it looks like they spent a lot of the money that came in from the investors. Edgar Kaiser Jr. went on to become a philanthropist, lobbying for better supports for people with mental health and addiction issues. He was awarded the Order of Canada in 2003, and he died in 2012. And now you know. We're going to break, and when we come back, we are talking to one of my favorite BC authors, Aaron Chapman. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is author Aaron Chapman. He's written 6 books, now 7 books, and he's getting into politics. This is the random episode. Welcome to the show, dude.
Good to see you again, Bob. Good to be back.
Yeah, we can talk about politics later.
Sure.
And I actually have a policy where I don't invite sitting politicians.
Well, I'm not sitting yet.
I know you're sitting. You're sitting
now,
on the
but
cusp of being on the other show that's on this channel,
Gotcha.
Mo's show.
Yes,
which is a show that you should be on.
Maybe, yeah. I've never been on. I know Mo, but I've never been on a show yet.
Mo, there you go.
There we go.
But we're here to talk about
Yes.
your next book.
Yes.
Is about Doug and the Slugs.
It is. We are just on the heels of A Sign of the Times, a book about the Penthouse Marquee sign. The story, Real Enough, The Unlikely History of Doug and the Slugs, which is a band that if you're around in the 80s, or maybe somebody of my vintage, I'm just maybe a little bit older than yourself, that you'll remember as being one of the great Vancouver bands that went sort of national and promised to go sort of international and didn't, but are still a very beloved band in the hearts, and they're still around. They still play, minus Doug, with a new Doug, I suppose.
There's a new Doug.
There's a new Doug. Yeah, Doug passed away about 2 decades back.
That I knew.
Yeah, there you go. And but the book sort of follows. They're a difficult band to sort of classify, but they wrote so many songs. They were a band that would sell at the Commodore 4 nights in a row. You know, very few local unsigned bands could do that. You know, like that's an exclusive club of a band that can fill the Commodore for
No
4
kidding.
nights. So they were huge in Vancouver, and they were very big across Canada. They never really broke necessarily in a big way internationally, but they're still beloved as a Canadian act. There's still a lot of people who cherish those records and like those songs. And the amazing thing is, Simon Kendall, one of the Slugs, has written the book. I chime in there as well. I have some of my own sort of little essays in the middle of it. But we have Doug's diaries, his private diaries, which have never been sort of fully published, anything like this. So Doug kind of speaks from beyond and chimes in, and sometimes he's almost conversing with Simon, or they're talking about the same place and the same story, and kind of maybe they disagree with one another. So it's kind of a wonderful thing to have his voice back, because he was quite a good writer. He wrote sort of like he lived, even though these were private diaries, and some of the guys in the band remember him scribbling them in the back of the bus and whatnot.
They're written.
They were written.
Whoa.
And they're typed. They're handwritten diaries that he wrote. And he was a very good artist, so his penmanship is beautiful. But to have Doug's voice back again, and as I say, he writes like he lived, that everybody was watching him, and he had a certain ego that a lot of lead singers have, I suppose.
Sure, yeah.
And that comes forth, and some of his humor and his personality, which has been gone for so long in the last 20 years, is kind of back to appreciate again. And he's a great storyteller, and he's a great sort of diarist and anecdotist in a sense. So it's fun to have him back in this world, and you know, it's a chance to sort of kind of relive that band again.
I remember as a kid just being like, "What is this band?"
Yeah,
what
exactly.
Funny...
Yeah. So it's a book about them. It's a music book, a little bit of sort of music history, and also sort of where they fit. And looking back, what was it about them that worked, or you know, it's sort of hard to define, hard to pin down. Thing. A few years ago, they had the Doug and the Slugs 40th anniversary at the Commodore Ballroom, and I hadn't seen the dance floor see a workout like that in years.
Cool.
You know, everybody kind of came up, people of all ages, kids who had never seen the band came with their parents who used to play the records, and it was a really unique evening. And I think that sort of in my own mind, I thought, geez, this would be neat to see. Look back on a story, you know, retold again. And Simon was such a great writer and a perfect guy to help tell that story and bring it to life, you know.
Cool. So it's out by the time this episode is out.
It'll probably be out in stores anywhere you look, anywhere in BC, across Canada.
Yep. Have a look here.
Yep.
Let's get into politics.
Yes, sir.
What is happening?
Well, I decided, you know, I had a little bit of shift in what my schedule and what I don't have an immediate book project on the go, so I thought to myself, with the October civic election coming up in October 2026
in Vancouver,
BC, I thought maybe it's something that I had always considered. I always had an eye on it. I was always interested in municipal affairs, like I am, and I thought, you know, there's never been a Vancouver historian on city council.
Yeah.
Somebody told me the other day that, well, you're the most interesting person, Aaron, that's running for city council. And I said, is that a compliment or an insult? I wasn't sure, because, you know, a lot of the people who go for that job are lawyers, urban planners, people who are housing activists, and I don't come from that world necessarily. I'm a person that's written 6, 7 books about the history of the city and some of the elements and things and people and places in it. And, you know, I've always had an interest in heritage preservation and the history of the city and stuff like that. And I thought it might be interesting to have that voice directly on city council. I mean, I'm interested in public safety and transportation and housing, like all the other subjects and the big subjects there are. But I decided to throw my hat in. And right now I'm just looking to get on the ballot with One City Vancouver.
Yep.
And it's a competitive field. There's a good dozen of us, probably all looking to occupy 5 or 6 positions and whatnot.
Yep.
So, but it's been really fun getting out there and meeting people, and not only just meeting the other candidates and other people involved from other parties as well, and just people who have an interest in the city and are that passionate about it that they want to throw themselves into hours-long meetings
Absolutely.
and volumes of reading on municipal codes and stuff like that. So,
I admire you for doing it. I don't do political endorsements, but I will say that you are not the most interesting candidate in the air quotes, because the sax man, the saxophone guy, Mr. Peanut ran, you know that. I think that when somebody says interesting, I don't think that's a compliment. I'm saying you are a very interesting candidate.
Well, thank you. This election, maybe. I love Mr. Peanut. I would have voted for Mr. Peanut, too.
This election.
Yeah, this
sure.
election,
But you're no Mr. Saxman, because they were joke candidates.
Right.
You're serious, and I think you'll do a great job.
Well, thank you,
of
Bob.
this,
I appreciate it.
And I have no doubt you're going to get the nomination, and we'll see what happens at City Hall in the future. We'll see you talking more about books on this show in the future. For now, Nina is out on the streets talking to people about things that they like. Welcome back to the show. Nina is out on the street talking to people about all the random things they love about BC. Nina.
I'm Nina Savage, and this is Street Survey. Each week, Bob reminds us of what makes this province so great. But today we want to hear from you. What makes BC so special? So I'm here with...
I'm Haley.
Nice to meet you, Haley. What's your favorite part of getting outside on a day like today?
I like going to the park and taking walks.
Well, on a day like today, I love everything.
So I've lived Pacific Northwest my whole life, and I feel like you really get the best of all of the nature mixed with, like, especially in this area, city and nature combination. I love it.
Well, I like the forest and going hiking and ice skating. I like the cold.
How long have you been in British Columbia for?
We were just visiting for the weekend from Seattle.
And so how does it compare so far, Washington to British Columbia?
Oh, we love it here. It's fantastic. Especially a day like today, you got a beautiful view of the mountains. Kids love the park. It's fantastic.
One of the things I really like about Vancouver particularly is all the multiculturalism. All the festivals, all the listen to people speaking other languages, all the restaurants. It's really nice because it's so diverse here.
In the summer, I like going to the ocean and doing some swimming. And in the winter, I love... if it snows, I like making snowmen.
The weather is not as hot as we used to live. So, yeah. We get to see the Burnaby Mountain Range instead of the Olympic Mountain Range.
What do you do to engage with your community here in BC?
I talk to strangers, like I am with you right now.
What's your favorite part of the park? Like, what do you like to do at the park?
I sometimes in the park, I like go, there's an area with trees. I sometimes go there, or I play in the playground.
So what do you like to do on a day like today in BC?
We're walking around the track because a lot of the nice walks in the Lower Mainland are in the woods. So we're gonna go out to be in the sun. We gotta stay out in the sun. So that's what we're doing.
I just say being outside. I got to take advantage of it, especially after a week of rain. Just get some sun, spend some time with family or friends.
Yeah, pickleball, hiking. There's the track right behind you, basketball courts. There's, just to get outside and get active.
And how do you handle the dreary days that we're given here in British Columbia?
I'd say we try to keep her busy with some indoor sports. She was doing swimming all of last week and more like board games and indoor things, but it's tough. Yeah.
Well, I think get involved in a hobby that you like or something like that. There's lots of stuff at the libraries and the community centers. Get involved in something and you'll meet other people that have those similar interests. You might make some friends that way.
And do you think you want to stay in British Columbia for your whole life?
Probably.
Talking to these folks is a great reminder of how beautiful this province is. We have nature, we have awesome people. Get outside. This is Street Survey, and I'm Nina Savage.
We're going on a BC road trip to 3 random locations that I love. And the first one is Barkerville, which feels random only because I never hear people talking about it anymore. When I was a kid growing up in the interior, there were 3 places my friends' parents would take them on their big annual road trips. West Edmonton Mall, Vancouver, and Barkerville, which was one of the first towns in BC, incorporated in 1862. People coming here to participate in the gold rush rushed up to the area, which is just past what is now Quesnel, close to a little town called Wells, which only recently got cell coverage and which has an excellent little heritage hotel you should stay at when you're there. It's called, wait for it, the Wells Hotel in Wells. Barkerville was named after a dude named Billy Barker who struck it rich here. And what remains is now basically a fully operating little gold town. A National Historic Site of Canada, it's owned by the province of BC, and the people who work there walk around dressed in period costumes. And you get a look at what life was like for settlers in the 1800s when they came up here from California and other places looking to make it rich. It's a lot of fun for historians and families alike. The next stop is random only because you can't drive there. This is the road trip part of this destination ends at the south terminal of YVR Airport, where you park your car and board a small plane headed for Bella Bella. This was the tiny little airport where Elon Musk was recently spotted for better or for worse. And when I was here, I talked to the person who shot those covert photos of him. I will not reveal who it was. This little airport is where you transfer from your small plane onto a helicopter and are flown a few minutes to a peaceful floating fishing resort called King Pacific Lodge. This is where a trip of a lifetime is. You might need to save up for it because it is not cheap. You might have to splurge. It's in the traditional territory of the Heiltsuk people, many of whom work as fishing guides here and as various operators at the lodge. One of their longtime employees named Pat Dean, aka Chief, just passed away as I was writing this episode. And I'd like to say, rest easy, Chief. It was nice to meet you. And from what I've heard from everybody, you're gonna be missed. Now, Chief was a fishing guide, and that's what most of the reasons are to visit this place. The guides take you out fishing for salmon and other fish, and they show you the beauty of the territory. You'll probably see whales at some point. Here's some orcas that surrounded our boat when I was here last with my son this past summer. And when you finished your day, you're treated to a wonderful meal. Then maybe you'll take a hot tub, go to bed, do it all over again the next day. The next stop on this random and disjointed road trip is a place called Uncle Al's near Blind Bay between Salmon Arm and Chase. I might have told you about this guy already, but his name is Al, of course, and at first glance, his place looks a bit like somewhere you might stop if you were in the beginning of a horror movie and your car broke down and you were about to get murdered. Don't let that stop you from going in. Rest assured, Uncle Al is the friendliest dude on this stretch of road. And he has a ton of antiques that you won't find in the picked over spots in the city. The last time I stopped in on him, he handed me a cookie when I got there, and I walked out with 3 things I didn't know I was looking for. So go somewhere random or just stop somewhere random and enjoy your BC road trip. This piece of history is proudly supported by the Museum of Vancouver. Vancouver's story begins here. Welcome back. We're here in the collections storage of the Museum of Vancouver. It's the random episode, and we are bringing you the most random thing here. I've seen this thing like 15 years ago. I saw this thing every time I come down into this amazing space. I think about this thing and I am drawn to it. Ryan, what are we looking at here?
Well, if you want random, it doesn't get much more random than our life-size former Mayor Mike Harcourt statue.
Yes. Why is this thing here?
Yeah, so we had to do a bit of research to actually figure out its story because, like you, it's something that we've seen in the collection but didn't really know a lot of the backstory for. So in 1983, we hosted an exhibition about dolls in Vancouver, and the museum sought permission from City Hall to commission a life-size replica of Mike Harcourt to include in that exhibition.
We have the now declassified document from the mayor's office saying, yes, you're allowed to make this thing, and yes, you can spend $800, which is how many dollars
About
today?
$2,300.
Okay.
Inflation.
Okay, and this was originally in the doll exhibition, and then it came back for the centennial.
In 1986. So this doll's actually appeared a few times at the museum. We had him back for our 1986 centennial exhibition. So when the museum turned 100, we did a decade by decade history of Vancouver, and Mayor Mike Harcourt was included in the 1980s. And then when former Premier Mike Harcourt was injured in 2002 in a fall, we brought this back on display and people could sign a get well soon card for him.
What does he think of this thing?
Well, as far as we can tell from our records, he was pretty entertained by it. So while we sought permission from City Hall to have it made, he, as far as we know, hadn't seen it before the exhibition opened. So he was invited as a guest of honor to the exhibition and got to meet himself there.
That's pretty amazing. We have a bunch of stuff here in the collection. We also have something from your personal collection.
Yeah.
What are we looking at
so
here?
So talking about random, no one in my family or myself knows exactly why I did this, but as a young child, I dressed as Premier Mike Harcourt for Halloween one year.
The funny thing is that it looks like you might be wearing a sweatshirt that is similar to his. You don't have the signature sweatpants that he's wearing, which wrap all the way around the back. The zipper, for some reason, goes from the front to the back. Ryan thinks it's because it was supposed to be because it was easier to pull it up. I think this might be a hidden piece of history. The sweatshirt has Vancouver's flag on it. I wish that I could get one of those patches and I would make a sweatshirt just like that one. Oh, and also, this was not a popular thing in the news.
Well, so it's interesting you bring that up because when we brought it back for the 1986 Centennial exhibition, we were reviewed in the Vancouver Sun, and I'm just going to read an excerpt from the review specifically about this statue. So it said, quote, "Worse still is the display for the 1980s. The main item is a life-size model of Mayor Mike Harcourt jogging. He's surrounded by a Centennial and Expo souvenirs, including a stupid plastic back scratcher, yawn. Considering this is supposed to be the major museum exhibition for the centennial year, it's surprisingly bland and unimaginative. Once it's over, remembering Vancouver might best be forgotten."
Well, you know what? It's $800 in those dollars, $2,300 in today's. I'll give you $2,500 for the statue right now, and I need to have this, and I'll need to get it to my car today. This is one of the most awesome pieces of history here in Vancouver at the Museum of Vancouver. Vancouver's story begins here. That's the show for this week. Big thanks to Aaron Chapman, show director Derek Wong, roving reporter Nina Savage, editor Arav, and everybody at employee-owned CHEK Media. Follow me on social media for more stories and check out my digest, the Now You Know BC Almanac at bcbob.ca. You can buy copies for $25 and subscribe to my newsletter there where I do regular giveaways and I share stories all about BC. And now you know BC.